Hey everybody, Ben here from the Bonehead podcast, and welcome to Theory Thursday. So every week we get together and we dissect an element of Blood Bowl. We take a bit of a deep dive, whether it's tactics, strategy, stats, whatever. We look at an area of Blood Bowl, we learn a bit more about it with the hope of actually being able to understand the game a bit better, and then we can choose whether or not we want to do the right thing. The idea is we kind of build some heuristics and we break some things down. So we've looked at dedicated fans before in a league to determine how much cash you're going to win, what the right amount is going to be. Now for tournaments, and the reason we're going to be looking at this today is because of tournament builds, you end up with spare cash. Now I've done this when I'm going through the sevens team rosters. The spare cash in a sevens kind of resurrection format goes on towards assistant coaches. In a league, it goes to dedicated fans. They do two very different things, and in a tournament, AC can be really important. So today, we are going to take a bit of a deep dive into assistant coaches. But first things first, what are assistant coaches? So assistant coaches are things you purchase during the league for your team. So here we go. You can take 0 to 6 assistant coaches. Any team can hire a number of these guys. They represent specialists brought in to help with various aspects of the game. The benefit of assistant coaches is covered on page 41. We'll come to that in a second. But essentially, every team can hire assistant coaches when it's first drafted for the cost of 10,000 gold pieces each, paid for during basically when you redraft your team, when you draft your team. Additional assistant coaches may be purchased during a league in the hiring, firing and temporarily retiring step of the post-game sequence for the cost of 10,000 gold pieces. So during a league and when you build a team, you can buy assistant coaches. And the whole point of this is to win the kickoff table, because the kickoff table has changed. So back in the olden days, back in the before times, a roll of a 7 on the kickoff table was changing weather. It was classic. And then 6 and 8 were cheering fans and brilliant coaching. That has changed up quite a lot. And now, number 7 on 2d6 being the most frequent result is brilliant coaching. So brilliant coaching, when you roll a 7 on the kickoff table, both coaches roll 1d6 and add the number of assistant coaches on their team draft list. So if you've bought 2 ACs, you roll a d6 and add 2. The coach with the highest total gains 1 extra team reroll for the rest of this drive. Okay, if this team reroll is not used before the end of this drive, it is lost. In the case of a tie, neither coach gets a team reroll. So there's 2 key things that have changed here. One is if the roll is a draw, nobody gets the reroll. Now, if you are a sevens fan of old, that will feel pretty normal to you. But I'm pretty sure that back in the olden days, if you drew, everyone gets a reroll. Anyway, not the case now, but also it has to be used by the end of the drive, which is interesting, and I actually hadn't picked that up until I read it just then. So it used to be for the remainder of the half. Now, because of the way kickoffs work, it's very rarely going to make any difference, but it is something that you're going to have to track when it comes to brilliant coaching. So the whole point of assistant coaches is they help you win this result. So if a reroll during your league costs 50k, 60k, 70k at the beginning, you're going to end up with 20, 30k left over. Now, you can put that into dedicated fans to generate more cash to save up for the reroll cost, which is then going to be doubled. Once you've started your season, reroll costs double, basically. And in sevens, they start off costing double. Anyway, so assistant coaches can help win brilliant coaching and sneak extra team rerolls onto your side of the pitch, basically. Now that rerolls can be stacked during a turn, as in you can use more than 1 a turn, rerolls become more useful. So looking at assistant coaches as a way to sneak extra rerolls in is really useful. And when you're looking at tournament rosters, assistant coaches are so useful. It used to be fan factor back in the day because that affected this. That doesn't affect this anymore. Only assistant coaches do. So that extra 20k, that extra 30k you've got in a resurrection tournament format is going to be really useful putting into assistant coaches. Let's have a look at the numbers of that. And I guess the best way to start here when we're looking at the numbers is the assistant coaches result. Sorry, the kickoff table result that brings up brilliant coaching is now a number 7. So it used to be 6 and now it is a 7, and that 7 is going to come up 6 times out of 36. So 1 in 6 times you roll on the kickoff table, it's going to be brilliant coaching. So you know, there are some other ones that come up very rarely, but generally speaking, that number 7, that re-roll roll-off for assistant coaches is going to be the most frequent kickoff table response. So we're going to make an assumption here, okay? So something coming up 1 in 6 kickoff tables really is only useful if you kind of got an idea how many times a game you're going to be rolling on a kickoff table. Now, the classic Blood Bowl score tends to be the 2-1 grind. Everyone knows about the 2-1 grind. We'll be doing a Theory Thursday about it soon enough. Can't remember the schedule. Everyone knows about the 2-1 grind, and if you've played in a league, you've played in tournaments, I think a 2-1 or a 2-2 is probably a very reasonable and very frequent response. So let's break down how many times you roll on the kickoff table. You've got the opening kickoff and you've got the second half kickoff. Those are immutable laws of Blood Bowl. You will be getting both, so that's 2 kickoffs a game. And then if you've got 3 touchdowns, so here I've just 1-0, 1-1, 2-1, you're going to get 5 kickoffs per game, and I actually think that is a pretty fair amount. I went back and looked at some of our leagues, and actually the average touchdowns per game was 3.6, 3.7, I think. So I feel like having 5 kickoffs per game is a pretty reasonable average, and from looking at tournaments, it can be way higher, it can be way less. So on kind of just as an assumption, we're going to say that there's around about 5 kickoff rolls a game. And of those 5, 1 in 6 is going to be brilliant coaching. So let's have a look now and see the chances of you winning that reroll. Thank you, Windows. Winning that reroll on a kickoff result. Okay, so we've got here just the difference in your assistant coaches versus your opponent's assistant coaches. Now, if we start at 0 and you've got 0, 42% chance of you winning that reroll. Why is it not 50-50? Because a draw gets you nothing. Nobody wins in that one. So 42% of the time, if you've got equal assistant coaches, you're going to win the reroll. It's the same on the other side. Now, as that starts to creep up, it starts to look much, much better. So say your opponent hasn't bought any assistant coaches, but you had 10k over, you chucked 1 in, you are now 58% to win that reroll. You chuck in 2 assistant coaches and they go for 0, 72%. You chuck in 3, they've got none, 83%. Now it works both ways, guys, doesn't it? So if you have got 1 less assistant coach, so if you don't buy any and they buy 1, 28% chance of you getting that reroll. If you're 2 down, it's 17%, and if you're 3 down, it's 8% chance of getting that reroll on a brilliant coaching. So you kind of can see here that if you've got 1, if you've got 2, it's a massive swing. So if you don't buy any assistant coaches, or your opponent's got 1 or 2, you are really not going to be getting that reroll very often. So we've already kind of decided that a 5 kickoff game is probably about where we think we're going to be in Blood Bowl. Okay, maybe 4, maybe 6. So we're going to say it averages out 5. So of a 5 kickoff game, what is the likelihood that brilliant coaching is going to come up and that you are going to win it? So 5 kickoff results, if you've got +3 assistant coaches, you've got a 69% chance overall to net yourself a reroll. +2 assistant coaches, 60%, +1 assistant coach, 48%. Then it drops down, no assistant coaches difference, there's a 35% chance that the result is going to come up and that you are going to win it. -1, 23%, -2, 14%, and -3, 6%. So if your opponent goes and brews up a roster with 3 assistant coaches and you go in with nothing, you have only got a 6% chance of winning that roll. Now, everybody knows you can spike the roll and it can go all right, but 6% here, 69% at the top, I think you can kind of see that actually at a tournament, paying that extra 10, 20, 30k to get a few assistant coaches is massively going to, increase the likelihood that during one single game, you're going to get a reroll. Now, don't get me wrong, assistant coaches are going to come in handy in a league, okay? You're going to get some assistant coaches, and every now and again, it's going to get you that reroll. However, in a league, that extra 10, 20, 30k that you've got left over from your build is going to be of more use saving up for that apothecary, putting into dedicated fans to brew you up more cash. Okay, it's just more important that way. But when it comes to a tournament setting where it's resurrection and there's very limited advancement, then actually assistant coaches have a little place to shine here. So we are going to look at the stats here. How many rerolls you are likely to score if you are in a 3-game tournament Now, a lot of tournaments, Blood Bowl wise, if they're a one-day tournament, it tends to be 3 games. So 3 games, 5 kickoffs a game. That's what we're going to use here to kind of advise us on how many rerolls you are going to generate. So let's start in the middle. You don't take any assistant coaches. Your opponent also has no assistant coaches. You are +0 on your assistant coaches. At the course of a tournament, you're going to earn an extra reroll as we go up. So +1 is 1.4 rerolls, +2 is 1.8 rerolls, and +3 is 2 rerolls. So if you go in and you make sure that you have 3 assistant coaches more than your opponent across that day, across that tournament day, you are going to end up with basically an extra reroll in 2 of your 3 games. Now, I know that's not brilliant and it certainly is reliable, but if you are paying 30k to get a reroll in 2/3 of your games, most rerolls tend to be 60k, should we say. That's 30k on assistant coaches to get 40k's worth of rerolls. It's amusingly it fits about right. Now, that will decrease. So like I said, if you go with 0, it's going to be 1 reroll across the day, and it just goes down and down and down. If you are below on the assistant coaching level, if you're -3, you've got basically a chance to earn a 1/5 of a reroll across the day. I thought this is a pretty useful way to kind of summarize. If you are building a roster and you pay 30k to get those assistant coaches, your opponents don't, you're likely to end up with an extra 2 rerolls on that day. And we've got to look at the entire spread here. So we're going from 0 all the way up to 6. So 0 +0 AC 1 reroll, +1 1.4, +2 1.8, +3 2 rerolls, +4 2.3 rerolls, +5 2.4 rerolls, and +6 2.5 rerolls. So when you are looking at building your roster, basically from what we can see from the stats here, +3 assistant coaches is probably the optimal point there. If you have 3 assistant coaches and your opponents have none, you are likely to net 2 rerolls across 3 games. Basically, I like to put these stats down into like 3 game splits, okay, because most leagues are like in batches of 3, most tournaments are batches of 3. It's kind of a good way to gauge what's going on. So if you are going to a tournament and you are looking at your roster, squeezing in those assistant coaches, this is what it is likely to net you, because it's the way of all these builds. It's actually, what do I take? Do I take a cheerleader? Do I take a dedicated fan? Do I take an assistant coach? You take an assistant coach, and you can see here that the more you put in, the more likelihood of you scoring those rerolls. I know that seems really simple, but actually 1 in 6 kickoffs is going to be brilliant coaching. The more AC you have, there is a steep curve, okay? The more AC you have, it just swings that likelihood of you getting that reroll massively to you. And the way we broke it down here is across 15 kickoffs, you're going to end up with 2 rerolls if you've got 3 AC more than your opponent. So to keep that safe, go 4 AC. If you have 5 AC and you've got 50k reroll, that's fantastic. But there are going to be some builds where you end up with 2, 3, 4 AC. And this here is what that is likely to net you across a 3-game tournament. 2 assistant coaches maybe swings you 2 rerolls. 3 assistant coach should swing you 2 rerolls, and 4 assistant coaches should swing you 2 and a bit rerolls. Now you can spike it, and the more ACs you've got, the better. But more importantly, and this chart does not represent this, but every time you get that reroll, your opponent doesn't. So don't think I don't really need 2 rerolls. Okay, if I put those 3 AC in there, maybe I get 2 rerolls on the day, that's going to be okay. Actually, you know what, I'm running a 3 reroll build and I've got leader, so I'm feeling really good about my rerolls. I'm not going to worry about spending it on AC. Your opponent may be running 1 reroll with leader. Okay, they are going to love this team reroll, and now there's not a limit. It's so much more useful. So forgive me for focusing on a really small topic, but I was going through these tournament rosters and I'm thinking, yeah, it'd be useful to chuck in some AC. How likely is that to come up? 3 games, 3 AC, 2 rerolls. There's your heuristic, guys. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Do let me know in the comments if this has been useful. I know we've focused on a really kind of minute area of Blood Bowl, but actually I wanted to know the stats, and I thought, why not share it with you guys as well? Because actually when you're building rosters, the more you know about stuff like this, the better a choice you can make. You can ignore it, but you know you're ignoring it. Anyway, I'm going to disappear now, guys, and we'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy blocking. Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to support the show even further, please like and subscribe. It really helps us out. Or come and join us in our Patreon, link below, where you get early access to our content and monthly competitions. See you later.